What do we want? Drugs! When do we want them? Drugs! This is a review of the Star Trek The Next Generation episode, Symbiosis. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know what happens in it, be warned, spoilers beyond this point. That's right, it's the Drugs Are Bad episode of TNG. But Steve, I thought this batch of retro reviews was going to be about episodes that dealt with labor issues. It was. It is. Yes, Symbiosis is first and foremost a cautionary tale about the dangers of drug addiction. It's also an episode where the Prime Directive figures prominently into the resolution, an angle I examined a few years ago in a video I did about the Prime Directive. But in addition to all of that, it's also about exploitation, and that is most definitely a labor issue. The Enterprise is in the Delos system, doing some science stuff, studying the unusually high solar flare activity of the Delosian sun when a distress call comes in. It's from a freighter, captained by a long-lost descendant of Dr. David Marcus, and they're having some problems. It seems their ship is rapidly failing, and they're falling into the atmosphere of the planet they're orbiting, and no one aboard seems to have the slightest clue how to fix it or how the ship even works. After a few frustrating attempts to talk the freighter captain through the crisis, Picard's finally like, to hell with it, just beam him over before the ship falls apart. So Riker and Yar go to the transporter room. They have only minutes before the freighter disintegrates, so Tasha's like, get your asses onto the transporter pad, like now! The freighter captain signals that they're ready, but when Tasha energizes the transporter, she beams over a bunch of storage containers. The cargo the freighter was carrying. Riker's like, oh my god, what is the deal with these dipshits? He orders Tasha to beam the storage containers into the cargo hold and lock on to the actual people on the ship. By the time Tasha is finally able to beam the occupants of the ship over, the freighter is falling apart and she can only log on to 4 out of 6. Those 4 people materialize on the transporter pad, and they are Sobi and Langer from the planet Brekka, that's the planet they're orbiting at the moment, and Tijan and Romus from the neighboring planet of Ornara. Tijan was the captain of the freighter, and the first thing on his mind is that cargo they beamed over. Damn, whatever that stuff is must be pretty important, huh? The cargo is a substance called Felicium. Tijan says it's medicine that his people need very desperately because they're all sick, you see. Felicium is the only treatment for a plague that affects all the Ornaran people. But there's a dispute over who the Felicium belongs to. Tijan and Romus purchased the Felicium from Sobi and Langer, but the goods they were exchanging for it burned up with their ship. So Sobi and Langer now consider that deal to be null and void, since they haven't received what they are owed. Tijan and Sobi start to argue about it, things get physical, and hey, it turns out that both Ornarans and Brekkians have electricity superpowers. So that's neat. Just kind of a random, neat thing. The Ornarans do seem like they're in bad shape, and Picard doesn't like the sound of that word plague they keep throwing around, so he has Dr. Crusher check him out in sickbay. She's puzzled. They show symptoms of a disease, but she can't find any trace of an actual infection. She suggests that Picard go and sweet-talk the Brekkians into letting go of enough of the medicine to at least treat Tijan and Romus for right now. So Picard does, and the Brekkians agree. Sobi cracks open one of the canisters of Felicium and doles out enough for 2 doses. Then, in sickbay, Dr. Crusher watches as Tijan and Romus take their medicine, and after witnessing their reaction, kind of a mellow, hazy euphoria, she's not puzzled anymore. She knows exactly what's going on. Crusher tells Picard, hey, guess what? Those drugs in the cargo bay? They're drugs. The reason I couldn't find evidence of a plague in the Ornarans is because there is no plague. Their symptoms were from withdrawal. The drug is a narcotic and they're addicted to it. Crusher suggests synthesizing a non-addictive substitute to Felicium to enable the Ornarans to wean themselves off of their addiction, but Picard's like, can't. Prime Directive. Tijan and Romus get a call from Ornara. It's this guy, Margan, who is their boss? The president of Ornara? It's not really clear, but it seems like he's in charge, and he wants to know where the shit is and what's taking so long. Desperate to help his suffering people, Tijan grabs Riker, holding him hostage with his electricity powers. Tijan tells Picard, "Give us the Felicium or I'll kill this guy." And Picard's like, "You think that's a threat? Dude, it's season 1. I barely know him." His bluff called, Tijan lets Riker go. Langer, one of the Breccians, drops by and wants to talk to Picard about something, so Picard's like, "We're gonna go talk to her," and Riker's like, "I'll hang out here with the guy who just threatened to kill me and his equally desperate addict friend. I'm fine, by the way. Oh, you're already gone." Picard and Crusher go to the Breccians' quarters where Sobe and Langer have come to a decision. They're going to let the Ornarans have the Felicium. They can pay for it later. What's important is that the sick people get the medicine they need. Picard's like, "Wow, dude, you're an even bigger scumbag than when you worked for Khan." Between the two of them, Picard and Crusher deduce what's going on here between the Breccians and the Ornarans. The Breccians invented Felicium because there once was an actual plague, and it affected them first, but they realized how dangerously addictive the drug was and avoided becoming dependent on it. However, when the plague struck Ornara, the Breccians offered the Ornarans the drug and allowed them to get hopelessly addicted, knowing they would still need the Felicium long after the plague had been cured. Sobe and Langer fill in a couple of additional details. The arrangement between the Breccians and the Ornarans works so well for the Breccians that Brecca no longer has any other industry. All they do is manufacture the drug, which they sell to the Ornarans, and in exchange, the Ornarans produce everything the Breccians need. Crusher is outraged, but Picard reluctantly agrees not to tell the Ornarans any of this, since such a disruption to the cultures of both planets would be a violation of the Prime Directive. However, Picard also rescinds his offer to the Ornarans to help them repair their fleet of failing cargo ships, since that would also be interference. With those ships on their last legs, and with neither the Ornarans nor the Breccians apparently possessing the skills to fix them, it seems their, trade agreement will be coming to an end before too long, one way or the other. And that's pretty much it. Crusher is mad at Picard for not doing more to help the Ornarans break their addiction, or at least manage their withdrawal symptoms once those last cargo ships break down and their Felicium connection dries up. But Picard's like, "Sorry, Prime Directive, our hands are tied. Now can we go?" Symbiosis is a pretty blatant anti-drug episode. There's even an infamous scene where young Wesley, sweet summer child that he is, innocently asks why anyone would try recreational drugs in the first place. And Tasha says, because not everybody lives on an interstellar love boat, and sometimes people with shitty lives want to forget their troubles for a little while. And the scene ends with this really weird cut to Data, who looks like he might be thinking, recreational drugs, eh? I wonder if the replicators make those. Despite that, there's much in this episode that is of interest when viewed from a labor-related perspective. The relationship between the worlds of Brecca and Ornara is not symbiotic, as the title suggests, but nakedly exploitative. Dr. Crusher comes right out and says it. The Breccians have intentionally addicted the Ornarans to the drug and are leveraging that addiction to force the Ornarans to work in their, the Breccians, interest. The drug is of no practical value, but the Ornarans need it, they think, to survive. Other than the drug, which they use to maintain their domination of the Ornarans, the Breccians produce nothing. They extract everything they need and everything they want to enjoy their apparently quite cushy and comfortable lives from the Ornarans. Now tell me, how much of what I just said would have to change if, instead of a drug, we were talking about money? Not very much, would it? It differs in the details, but broadly speaking, the arrangement between the Breccians and the Ornarans is the same sort of relationship that existed for centuries between the working class and the ownership class, between labor and the company, however you want to describe it. The people of Ornara do all the labor, create all the value of this interplanetary society, while the Breccians enjoy those fruits of Ornaran labor and offer nothing of value in return except something that enables the Ornarans to temporarily escape from the misery which the Breccians themselves created and imposed upon the Ornarans in the first place. Even though it wasn't the intention of the creators, I think the episode works better as a workers' rights allegory than an anti-drug one. The just say no message, especially in that Wesley scene, is extremely heavy-handed, and despite a sometimes quite moralistic tone, there doesn't seem to be much of a moral other than don't do drugs, kids, and people who deal narcotics to addicts are bad, which, yeah, thanks for those keen insights, Star Trek. Read as a workers' rights story, it's imperfect and incomplete, but it also gives you a general picture of what the essential labor and company relationship is, why it's exploitative, why it's a problem from the labor side of things, and why it shouldn't be allowed to exist in that lopsided, unregulated state. No society that has evolved to a point where the upper class controls all the wealth and does none of the work, while the lower class does all the work but gets to share in none of the wealth, is very healthy, no matter how strong and stable it may appear at any given point in time. Good thing we don't have to worry about that here in the good old US of A, huh? Oh, thank God I live in America, where everything is fine and always will be. As an episode apart from its themes and deeper meanings, Symbiosis isn't all that great. It's definitely not the worst that Season 1 of TNG has to offer, but it's not exactly gripping drama either. It is a classic Star Trek premise, for sure. Enterprise visits a new solar system, encounters a society with an obvious big problem, learns about the problem, solves, or in this case, deliberately chooses not to solve the problem, and leaves, never to return. The plot is simple and straightforward, which could have been a good thing if the story was a little more compelling than this. The big decision at the end belongs to Picard to break the Prime Directive or to uphold it, to intervene, or to allow this toxic exploitation to continue. But the episode never really feels like it's about Picard in any meaningful way, so his ultimate choice to back away and leave the Breccians and the Ornarans as he found them doesn't land with as much impact as it should. There are a couple of details worth noting as fun bits of trivia. The episode features 2 guest stars, Merritt Buttrick as T'Jon and Judson Scott as Sobe, who both also appeared in Star Trek II. And even though it originally aired a week before Skin of Evil, the episode where Tasha Yar is killed, this episode was filmed after that one, meaning from a production standpoint, this is Denise Crosby's final episode as a regular cast member. And if you look closely in the background of the shot where Picard and Crusher walk out of the cargo bay on their way to the turbo lift near the end, you can see Denise way in the background, waving goodbye. And then, presumably moments later, Rick Berman stalked over, tore the Starfleet badge off of her costume, and told her to get the fuck off the set. Not a great episode, or even a particularly good one, but an interesting one to think about and talk about, particularly if you read it in a way that I'm pretty sure no one involved in making it actually meant. It can be taken as a statement about the importance of workers' rights and balance in the relationship between labor and the company. An incomplete and unintentional statement, but a strong one nonetheless. And I'll take as many of those as I can get. God knows there are plenty of people who need to hear them. Those are my thoughts on Symbiosis. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Don't forget to join me and my best friend Jason Harding this weekend for our review of Episode 9 of Season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Our review will be up sometime on Saturday, and Please come back next week for another retro review. Next time, this batch of retro reviews focusing on Star Trek's labor-themed episodes continues with a look at another episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, The Quality of Life. I'll see you next week for that. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.